Today's episode is brought to you by The Gallery. Based out of New York, The Gallery is a curated collection of photographs from around the world. While we are all unable to travel, this is a great way to bring a piece of the world to you. All prints are made of 100% recycled aluminum, giving your wall the gallery finish. Right now, the gallery is offering our listeners 15% off their purchases by using the code 15OFF. 15 and all capital OFF. Go to thegallery.com. That's the GALRY.com. So your wall will never be boring again. You can also visit their social media pages at the_gallery, the_GALRY. Thank you for listening. Hey guys, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. So it's hassle-free. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. And it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM to get started. Thank you. Hey guys, I just wanted to say something before the start of the episode. I wanted to say that thank you for all the support to this podcast. It's really appreciated. You've been helping me and, me wanting to do more episodes and things like that. Another thing I wanted to say is this is an off-script episode today, and it's opinion based. So what I say is not, if you don't believe it's correct, that's okay with me. You can. It's to try to tell people to go do more research and to see people not in the light of one way or another. And so anything I say is opinion based, and that it's not 100% factually backed, but I try mostly in this episode to rely off of resources I know. So just before you watch the episode, I just wanted to clarify. So yeah, thank you, and I hope you enjoy listening.
Hey guys, you're listening to The Pod Must Not Be Named. I am your host Sammy with my co host Maddie. Hi, Maddie.
Hello, this is a podcast where we talk about things that we find interesting, things that we like, and things that we don't like so much. So, Sammy, I believe that you have something exciting to share with us today.
Yes, we have a guest, Tavish, who also is a podcaster and who has a podcast on history. And so, hi, Tavish.
Hello, my name is Tabish. I'm Pakistani American, born in America. And my podcast is called The Battles of History. You can find it on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes. And the gist of my podcast is battles throughout history, starting 1914 all the way to present day.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's great.
it was, like we're really excited to have him because one of these days I read a news, especially in the US with, all this Black Lives Matter movement, and it's a lot of questions being asked about their history and their legacy. People are talking about vandalizing or bringing down George Washington's statue because he was a slave owner. So that prompted me to think, like what are these historical icons in a way, right? Who might seem great on history book, but are very complex in nature, and very they are not white or black as characters, but they are very gray. And we shouldn't we be examining them, and like this would leave us a bit more educated on how people can be complex and achieve great things at the same time. Wouldn't you agree, Tavish?
Yeah. History is not something that's defined only by book, pencil and pen, and paper. It's very complicated. You know, we look at these individuals: George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, uh, all of these historical people, and it's either good or bad. And many of them are just products of their time. You know, George Washington, he was born and lived in a time where slavery was everywhere, taught to rich white men and women that slavery was okay. And now in the perception of 2020, we understand that's not okay. But when you go back to 1700s America, you ask them questions like, what's your opinion on women's votes or slavery, and you understand that they have a totally different view of the world. So what you say about history not being, these people not being black and white but gray, I totally agree with that.
Yes, of
Yeah,
course, and these opinions are not just limited to the West, wherein the dual opinions that people have and the ability to ask questions to the authorities and question the legacy that your forefathers or forefathers in the West have established. They have the ability to question these legacies and to question the kind of people they were in their professional lives or in their personal lives. But as we look in India, for example, we have our forefathers, we have our father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, who is globally known for the non-violent movement that he led towards the freedom struggle. And on the record, very less people, or in fact I haven't heard anyone question the legacy that he has established, in spite of a lot of historians claiming a lot about his personal life. For example, there are some historians who have written books about him claiming that he used to beat his wife and children, and he in some ways held the responsibility in making the Indian politics very feudal. One of the biggest national parties of India is a very dynasty based party. And people off the record hold Mahatma Gandhi responsible for it, but nobody on the record, can question the father of the nation. And therefore in India, if I look at in a certain way, what we lack is the uh, point of view or the opinion that people can bring on the table. And therefore what this episode brings in a different light is us belonging to very different ethnicities, and both all three of us coming from very different communities. So I really wanted to know, how do you question your father of the nation, and are there such claims just like we have about Mahatma Gandhi? There are some opinions that we cannot say out loud, but we believe in them. So are there such opinions about Muhammad Jinnah too?
uh Good question. So uh I've been researching for a past couple days on forefathers of both of our countries. Many of what both of them did was outstanding work. We can all agree. The creation of two countries, the non-violence movements. There are, as you say, some questions that are still being questioned. There are some motives with Jinnah. What I found is that some look at his religion. Uh, is he Sunni? Is he Shiite? That's something that some have asked about Jinnah. Is his legacy, his religion? Who was he? You know, he was a lawyer. He was from Britain. What kind of opinions did he have on other people? And so what I've been reading is mostly, people see him as somebody who accomplished something, which is by far true for both. But what I've also been reading is that there's some background to both of them that have that have blurred their visions. If you understand that, some people look into Jinnah's again religion. Is he Shia? Is he Sunni? When he passed away, what was he in 1901? Some people believe that he went to a court and declared that he was Sunni. He had changed to Sunni. Some people believe that's not true. That he kept being Shia. So I think a big question was his religion. I think that's been answered, I believe, with the fact that he went to court in, I believe, 1901. He stated that he was Sunni. That's one of the big controversies I could find on Jinnah. There isn't very many controversies on Jinnah, uh, seeing that he was what would be the backseat of the movement. He was Gandhi was more of the person we view as creating the nations. So when you look up, controversies for both people, you seem to find that there's more on Gandhi than there is on Jinnah, because Jinnah isn't widely known in the West and is widely researched. So if that answers your question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, I mean, we are asking these questions primarily also because, we have a unique opportunity here. I think that you being, born and brought up in US, but also within that Pakistani culture, it invites a level of dialogue that is not, it's not afforded to a lot of Indians. And, I genuinely wanted to know this. If How do you guys view Mahatma Gandhi apart from him winning independence for all of us? And like how do you as Pakistanis, how do you guys measure his contribution towards the creating of the nations and the discussions that led up to the partition? So,
Hmm.
how do you guys talk about it?
So another good question. Thank you for that. With Gandhi, it's seen as this. He was very influential in the decision to create Pakistan. Jinnah and Gandhi, both very great people when it comes to the idea of creating, seeing the impacts the British had on our countries, both respectively. And so what I feel as what we as Pakistanis see is more of this. He was a person who did something for both Pakistan and India. He was a person that helped create the foundation of our country, and or without him, our countries wouldn't be existing as they are today, whether that be negatively or positively. Our nations wouldn't be the same. Without him, the independence movement might have taken longer, if not would have not happened the same way as it did now. So that is a great viewpoint question. What do Pakistanis feel that Gandhi has put on the table? I feel like he's put a good amount of meal on the table for us to eat. So
All right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, moving on from that, of course, like there's a reason why Jinnah's religious afflictions were also such a controversial topic, because our nations were divided on the basis of religion, right? So it only makes sense that the one thing that actually divides us should be called into question when the father of nation is concerned.
uh yeah, your the idea that the British also had was basis on a more secular country and a more religious Islamic country. And we see that the 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 part of Jinnah and religion wasn't very controversial from what I've read. It was more on the basis of was he Sunni, was he Shiite, and we know that, or at least from my gathering, many people from what I've seen say he is Sunni, but I agree, there is that point.
Right. So again, I mean, coming back to what the matter at hand is, I would like to open this question up for both of you, because of course we understand that both Jinnah and Jawaharlal Nehru and of course Mahatma Gandhi were very important in making this nation. By questioning their like affluences, or by questioning what they were doing at that point in their lives, or probably like a couple of decades before that, should that tarnish their image of what they have gone on to do to the respective nations? And this brings me back to Harry Potter again. I mean, it's been one of my favorite fiction as a child, and when I read Deathly Hallows, it had Life and Lies of Dumbledore was a book that was published after his death, which called into question a lot of things that he might have done, that he might have regretted in his earlier life. And that does that make him a bad person? That does that not make him a great person? So in that vein, do you guys have any people that have personally influenced you or personally touched you, but you also concede that they might be more complex than what history textbooks or popular news articles might suggest?
uh oh, okay. So with what you're saying, so people in history that have affected me on a personal level that may not be who they are necessarily. I look at, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was a very courageous man in economics policies. The New Deal, his leading up to ending the Depression. But when we look at him, he wasn't this only perfect president. He had his flaws. He, again, stopping World War II was right around his time, 1939 to 1945. The horrors of war from the Germans and the Italians and the Nazis, and so a big thing FDR is controversial in is his acceptance of what's going on. That Adolf Hitler and Mussolini were very, I wouldn't say very big fans, but they were fans of FDR's ideas. And FDR personally actually did like Mussolini. And there is, I believe, evidence to the fact that FDR, agreed with Mussolini on some terms, and the Holocaust was going on, and Jewish immigrants tried to come to America, and it said FDR declined, and FDR knew of the Holocaust happening, but did nothing until he actually got into the war. Now,
And that was
another
the time
person.
when the fascism was also on the up, right? In the United States as well.
Yeah. Fascism was very rampant in both Britain and America and many other places, Canada. You know, it was this. I would assume it was this need for political votes. He was a politician after all. He needed to win votes to win the elections. So there was a big fascist movement in America. There was a big fascist movement in Great Britain, and so I like that you point that out, that it wasn't just the a European thing. It was also a homegrown thing. The American Fascist Party, the Canadian Fascist Party, the British Fascist Party. So I like how you bring that up.
Yeah, and as for me, like you asked about being able to criticize the people who have this image of being the forefathers of a nation, and as Tabish mentioned about the West, and if I take it to the angle and to the history of the East, especially of the Southeast Asia, uh, uh, having a dual say or having the ability to question the legacy of the leaders that we tend to worship does not take away the good that they brought to their respective countries. For example, yes, I agree, Mahatma Gandhi had his own flaws, but that does not take away the fact that he actually brought independence through a non-violent movement. And on the other side, Jinnah, he helped people of a certain religion, and what he could foresee that there must be a very many like he had already foreseen the communal differences of Southeast Asia, and he had advocated the creation of an entire country for a community and make it a safe place for them. So these are something that you cannot really debate on these facts, that they actually have done and contributed a lot towards the entire subcontinent. And even after that, if you look at the creation of East Pakistan and West Pakistan, even that was separated on the basis of language majorly. And today, if you look at Bangladesh, yeah, it is progressing in its own fields. So yes, I agree that you should have the ability and the freedom to question your forefathers, but again, remember that it does not take away the good that they have brought and in the ways that they have contributed towards the progress that you are seeing in your countries today.
I
Yeah,
would
that's an excellent point. Yeah, so Tavish, do you have anything to add to it?
Yeah, I was gonna that was a very excellent point. The wording was very good. I wanted to add on to it by agreeing with you. I also wanted to add on by saying you are correct. Uh a person's, personal life, that he people are people. They have flaws. We are not perfect people. Some being less perfect than others. But in the case of, Jinnah and Gandhi, they they did things that many others cannot do. And we all agree with that, I would suppose, that these two people
Absolutely.
did something that no man or woman could do, is to create two nations that will dominate Southeast Asian politics and culture for the years to come. You know, uh, there's a quote: "Few individuals significantly after the course of history uh, alter the course of history. Fewer still modify the map of the world. Hardly anyone can be credited with creating a nation state. Muhammad Ali Jinnah did all three." And that quote can be used with Gandhi as well. You look at people and you see they did personally bad things, but that doesn't take away from the great that they did. You and That's not to say that you should look upon to Adolf Hitler as this, great man. He created the highway system, Volkswagen. He did all this good stuff. That means he's great. No, the what he did was immensely bad, and we all agree that what he did to civilians and to the Jewish population, to other countries, was not okay. That
Yeah.
isn't the same as Gandhi and Jinnah. You know, they weren't these evil people with one or two good things that they did. They had their flaws, minor or significant, but they did something that, in my opinion, no other person could have done as great as they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent point. Again, I mean, like I couldn't agree more. But I would also, point out that a lot of people are of a belief system that father of a nation is sort of like their national flag. It's a symbol more than a person, right? And I would also, extend the same question to both of you again. Like, so after the fact that it's been about 7 decades since we have received gotten independence, or so how does it matter that we question the legacy of essentially these symbols right now, right? These people have become legends now, and these people mean to people living in India and Pakistan more than what they were as human beings. They have transcended that. So some people might argue that digging up shit from their past is actually pretty harmful to their legacy of what good they have perpetrated, and what symbol that they stand for even today. So how would you argue about that? Whether should historians question their lives morality, and or should they be left as symbols as they are?
uh so that was a good question. You see, the thing is, again, from previously what I said, they are people, they have their flaws. The historians aren't trying to make them look like the boogeyman, the worst human in all of history, the you know the destroyers of piousness. No, not at all. They're humans, and everyone agrees humans have flaws. The thing with trying to see criticism in somebody isn't to bring them down. No, it's to show us that they are also human. They are like us. We personally have done things that many others would look and see and say, why did you do that? What did you do? And another thing is, by criticizing these minor things, we're open to be able to criticize anything. We're opening our eyes, we're opening our brains to see that not everything is as perfect as a fairy tale. Not this is real life after all. We don't have perfection. There are bad things that happen, and with the symbolicness of these two people, I agree. They are symbols. That's okay. They are great people for both of our nations. They did great. But to say that you can't go and look at Gandhi's past and say, "Oh, look, he's perfect," that's not correct historically or human wise. No. But to say you can't do that is wrong, because again, we're not trying to tarnish their reputation. I myself am saying these people are great people. What we're trying to do here is start to open people's minds to take in information they may not personally like, to not only look at things that they want to see or they want to agree with, but to see history as something of not a straight line, but rugged, erased, removed, not this perfect symmetrical ruler edged line, but this scribbling on a piece of paper. So that point was very much needed in this conversation, to tell people who are listening who might become upset that we're not trying to tarnish the reputation. You might want to believe that we are, but we aren't. And we're just trying to tell people how they are humans. They can still be symbols of our great nations, but to say you cannot see them and question whether this was correct or not, and at the end of the day, you might not agree. I might not agree, but we are opening up a new chapter in other people's lives.
Yeah, and that's perfectly put. In fact, the and another point that I would like to add is that once you stop people from asking questions, there is no end to it. For example, if you start with the fact that you cannot question your forefathers, and then the authorities might ask you to not question the current president or the prime minister. So once you start closing the options for people to ask questions, they can extend that area to themselves, and there might be a point wherein you won't be able to question the authorities themselves. So it is very necessary to question your history and to question anything that the society or your nation blindly worships. For example, if you look at America, even their forefathers owned slaves, and that does not mean that they were bad people. That only means that yes, you have come to a stage and you have evolved as a society to a state where you can question things that the people have been worshipping for so many years.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Again, I am of the opinion that history should be a reflection of how our people have been, right? And it should contain the glory as well as the mistakes that we have committed. One of the great reasons why Germany is such a thriving nation right now is because they admitted what they did wrong with Hitler, or with in the First World War, their involvement, right? And right now they have accepted it and moved past it, and have done everything in their will to do it right, right? And whereas if we stop doing that, as Sammy mentioned, it's essentially propaganda, where we are believed and we are asked to love our nations no matter what. And yeah, that's a slippery slope, and yeah, that's exactly what fascism leads to, right? So on that note, like, let's open up the table. So Tabish, do you have any interesting tidbits about American leaders or American icons that you might share with us today?
Uh, okay, thank you for that. A major thing currently in America that some people are going back to is the American Civil War. You know, the Confederates versus the Union, the cause, why it happened, why didn't it stop, who is to blame for this, and you see on different sides, you see different opinions. You see one side claiming the Confederates were only trying to fight for states' rights, or were fighting for states' rights because the evil Union invaded them first. And you see Union's supporters saying, certain ones saying, the Union never did anything bad, and both are incorrect. People bring up Abraham Lincoln as this racist, this person who said, if I could save the Union without freeing any slaves, I would. And people bring that up, be like, hey, look, see, he didn't want to free the slaves. That's incorrect. His speech ended with, but I still believe that freeing the slaves is something that's good. He questioned whether the owning slaves was okay. He did many things for slaves that was considered good. Abraham Lincoln was of a time when abolitionism wasn't as big of a deal in the Union and in the Confederacy. He was in a time of white supremacy in the North. The idea that we shouldn't end slavery but contain it. And so Abraham Lincoln, when making speeches, he was trying to get the vote. He didn't want people to think, he's this freer of slaves, because he realized I wouldn't win any election in the United States of America at the time. Not even from local elections, if that spilled out about me. So his wording was to save himself from not winning the election, so he could create the Emancipation Proclamation, so he could free slaves, so he could end the Civil War. So, and that goes for many other people. There are bad and there are goods. And I'm not saying somebody is great. Slave owning is definitely not great. Uh, uh, you know, George Washington owning slaves, definitely not great. uh, and we should focus on the good people did, but also the bad they did. To criticize both the good and the bad, the nice and the evil of people, and not only look at one or the other.
Yeah, and going ahead, that I recently learned about the criticism of Christopher Columbus, who is famously known as the founder or the person who discovered the the United States. And it's so surprising that until last year I did not know that he is not a celebrated personality in the West, because we have always been taught about the great sailor that he was, and how he discovered the United States. And there's an entire holiday on his name in the United States. So I really wanted to know, what kind of what kind of a dual say or the debate you have on him, because on paper he is celebrated all over the place. And what do you think about him, and why do Native Americans really hate him? Because in Indian education, I haven't been taught about it much. Just the fact that Christopher Columbus was a great voyager and he discovered this island.
Okay, that is, I like the point of view pull up there. So Christopher Columbus is widely celebrated in America. His holiday. He's known as this man who discovered the Americas, who sailed around the ocean blue. Landed in the Caribbeans and said, "Hey, look, it's the Indias. It's the Indies." And this person who helped create America essentially in discovering a new land. Now, there's also the controversy behind him. The that he wasn't likely the first European to cross the Atlantic Ocean. Leif Erikson, the Norse Viking. Some people believed he landed in present day Newfoundland, Canada. 1000 AD, like 5 centuries before Columbus. Um, some countries refused to back Columbus's voyage. He went to Spain. Spain's like, okay, we'll fund your voyage. Aristotle, he helped to discover the Earth isn't this flat. This flat body of celestial land. It was round. Um, and many things. Christopher Columbus was, he was, I believe, caught. He was cruel. He was known to be cruel. He was arrested for his atrocities and crimes against the people when he was governor of Hispaniola. They brought him back to Spain in chains. He was found innocent, and many believe to be the reason why was because the king and queen of Spain were on Christopher Columbus's side. I've read somewhere that Italian immigrants tried to paint Christopher Columbus as this hero because Columbus, I believe, was Italian descendant or born in Italy.
Right.
According to one thing I found, it says that he was an opium addict. Opioids. He took that. That his men were responsible of introducing syphilis to Europe. He allowed for worse people to come to the Americas. Explorers that killed Native Americans, or what led to America being formed and Native Americans being pushed out of what's essentially their land. So it's you see how depending on who you ask, what you look for, and what you research, you have different opinions. An Indian opinion, and an American opinion, and a Native American opinion.
And exactly, I guess it's just a product of time, where Christopher Columbus might have been celebrated by a lot of countries because of how he founded America. And he was essentially, he was the one who planted the seeds for uh, that a country that would essentially influence the world politics in such a huge way. At the same time, people often question that he was just an imperialist, right? He called people that were native to the America savages, and people lacking manners, but in a way, we have been called that as Southeast Asians. And I don't think that we don't have culture. It's just that there aren't enough Native Americans anymore that could attest to that fact, that we weren't savages, we weren't uncultured people. And the whole invasion, and the whole uh, killing and murdering Native Americans for essentially owning land. And not even a lot of times it was not even intended or on purpose. They might have just brought a lot of viruses or a lot of diseases that the Native Americans simply were not exposed to. And at this time in life, we have enough understanding of microbes and bacteria to know that if a person is not in if a person is living in uninhabited environments, or a person is closed off from the rest of the world, that person might be susceptible to more than just violence, right? So I think it's also a matter of perspective. So would you also agree to that?
Uh, yeah, I agree to that. It's a matter of perspectivity. You know, you ask a Native American, and you ask an American who's sympathetic towards Columbus, and you ask an American who doesn't like Columbus, and you hear, you know, conflicting stories. You hear some say he was good, some say he was bad. You know, you ask a Southeast Asian what they believe about, you know, American politics and Christopher Columbus and the British landing in America, and they have not all, but some have the same opinions history books tell them. That, you know, it's indifferent to them, and I understand why. It doesn't affect them personally, and so it's not a very interesting topic for some. You know, uh, it's they would rather read about the British Raj and its effects on modern day India than they would Christopher Columbus on the effects of, you know, the entire world. Um, so I do agree that other people have separate opinions from me, and many, I would assume, who are listening to this also have different opinions than me, and I'm okay with that, because I can be wrong and you can be right, and I can be right and you can be wrong in certain areas. What I see
Or none
is,
of us can be right, and it can just be a matter of opinion,
yeah,
because our opinions cannot change the course of history, right?
yeah,
It's
exactly.
already been set
Mhm.
in stone.
Yep, it's already been pen and penciled into a rock somewhere in the Arizona desert. So we can't hunt for it and try changing it with what we believe is right or wrong. What we believe isn't what's, you know, solely written down on a book sometime in 1492. So
Yeah, so Sammy, do you have any icons or historical people that belong to the subcontinent who might have a similar, complicated history of their life?
Yeah, I believe that one of the most misunderstood historical figure in Indian history is Aurangzeb, who was the last strongest Mughal leader of India, and I think that he suffers the most from the present day biases in India, and that basically stems from the fact that British fostered their portrayal of Aurangzeb as a very cartoonish bigot to justify their rule as more civilized in the subcontinent. So there's this direct comparison that people do in Aurangzeb's rule and in the British rule, because they were the immediate successors, if I put it in that way. And from that comparison and from the portrayal that the British have done throughout the history about Aurangzeb brings out a very basic opinion and a very very generalized opinion of people all over the subcontinent that Aurangzeb was a communal maniac, which is definitely not true. Looking at the economic performances of the subcontinent during those times, all over the world. In fact, India was the biggest economy then, and it had 25%. It contributed with 25% of GDP in the entire world's GDP. So looking at these things, we can conclude that Aurangzeb had great economic policies then. And apart from that, looking at Aurangzeb's personal life too, Sufis then used to call him a living saint because he used to lead this such simple life, and he really did not, spend or squander a lot of money on building thrones or on building monuments. And therefore, yeah, you can say that as a king, he in a way fulfilled all the expectations that a leader should, and that also satisfies the condition of being expansionist. A ruler or a successor is always expected to have expansionist policies, which Aurangzeb had too. And therefore and this nature of his is quite misunderstood if we look into today's world, because of this expansionist policy, he also had a lot of enemies all over the subcontinent. And if you look into those battles that he had with other Hindu rulers, basically are looked at with a very communal or a very religious lens, which in fact were driven very politically then. His
Yeah, and it was a product of time, right? I mean, if we are talking good things about Aurangzeb, it doesn't necessarily mean that we are talking ill about people who fought against him, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Essentially, Aurangzeb was handed a bad hand. He was given a failing Mughal empire that was, it was suffering from years of ineptitude and too much love for art. And a lot of times people like the Marathas or people like the Rajputs who rose up against the Mughal rule was primarily because of self rule or swarajya, as people in India describe it. And that's not a bad thing to have. That's not a bad opinion to have, but that does not necessarily make Aurangzeb a bad person either. They both have their justified things to say, and they both have their right to rule as long as someone comes on top, right?
yeah. Basically, when I eulogize Aurangzeb as a very secular person, saying that if you study his the history of his time meticulously, you will learn that he had many Hindu bureaucrats. In fact, he had appointed more Hindus than any other Mughal. Okay, and when I say this, I do not mean that the other Hindu rulers weren't secular enough, because in fact Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj had appointed a number of Muslim leaders in his in his court. And therefore when I say that Aurangzeb is was quite a secular ruler, that does not mean that I'm implying that the rulers he fought weren't secular enough, because that would be like saying ki if Hitler was fighting against Stalin and Winston Churchill, that does not mean that they were angels. Of course they weren't.
Yeah, they are. Everyone's a complex personality, and again, I mean, it's a product of time. I'm sorry if I'm getting too much like a broken tape recorder, but it is how it is. If you look at Aurangzeb's life, a lot of people that actually write about his personal life or history often fail to convey the message that history need not be about protagonists and antagonists. It can be just about people that are making good of whatever hand it's been dealt to them since birth, right?
Yeah.
So in yeah, Tabish, do you want to, were you adding something?
Yeah, sorry for cutting you off. I was gonna add an agreement with you in saying that yeah, he was essentially a person of his time, and environmental, cultural, and physical, area. He ruled a Muslim kingdom in Southeast Asia during a time when the ideas that we have currently weren't the same ideas that they had. You can say that what we have to look in the background of what they were trying to do, why they did certain things. You know, uh, Architecture was a big thing he did, and by saying, it- let's focus on architecture, not the bad. No, let's focus on both. Very good. He created architectural masterpieces. He helped in, as you said, economy, textiles. He helped to try to bring a crumbling empire back from its knees to standing up on crutches. He was trying to be the brace to a broken leg. And and the point of the British coming in and trying to, as you said, I believe, changing history on the viewpoint of him. You have to realize why they did that. The British weren't these, just came in guns blazing, taking over parts of India and Pakistan. Oh, look, Karachi, let me take that. No, they were, for conquerors, they were very, tactical, smart. They used skills that they knew how to. They went, it's the gossip way, going up to a bunch of Sikhs and saying, oh, look at what the Hindus and Muslims are doing. Going up to Hindus, oh, look, the Sikhs and the Muslims are calling you bad names. Going up to the Muslims and saying, you look, the Hindus and the Sikhs are trying to, rebel against your country. They're doing this and that. And by slightly changing ideas of people, they were able to substantially take over an entire subcontinent. That might not go into people's brains. That is impressive. An entire separate groups of people under one empire at that time is impressive. Think of having every religion under one rule from a person that's not even from that country. Imagine subcontinent of India with Jews, Christians, Buddhists, Sikhs, Muslims, Zoroastrians under someone who isn't even from India, who isn't even from Pakistan or Bangladesh. So the adding to the fact that, to manipulate history or to look at somebody with the biased way, it isn't always correct. So I would suggest people who want to do research not rely on one piece of information. Look at, pieces of information from that time, before the time, after the time, from people who aren't native to that land, from people who are native, from scientists, historians, journalists, and look throughout, not rely on one piece of information. Somebody on as a joke, somebody on WhatsApp or Facebook posted as a picture. Oh, look, they did this. So
Yeah, that reminds me of the some days ago I was reading about Winston Churchill and the opinions he had about Indians then, and as such, you can anywhere find the racist opinions that he had about India, and that again brings me to the argument that we have demonized Hitler to a great extent, and which in some ways, yes, is justified, of course, because he was trying to wipe out an entire population. But on the other side, it does not bring Winston Churchill or Stalin on the higher grounds. They were equally bad.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. As they say, history is written by winners, and that could not be more true in case of World War II, right? So the Allied powers, as soon as they won, they actively tried to censor and conceal the things that they actually used to win. To
I
cloud
would,
the judgment of
yeah.
their people, right?
Yep. I would like to add, I agree with your point that we shouldn't only see one person as bad. We should see that war isn't some Superman versus evil criminal type of movie. That we know definitely for sure one side is better than the other. This is war. This is there's you can do many things under justification of war. And so when talking about it, and it's a sensitive topic, it's a very sensitive topic, so we have to go cautiously through this tunnel of sensitivity to come up with answers. So what I wanted to say is, uh we all agree, by far, Hitler was not a good person. We all agree. What it's being said is, we should also look to see that Joseph Stalin was also this. He murdered millions of people. Joseph Stalin
Tens
murdered
of millions
millions and
of people.
millions of people. Yeah,
Yeah.
and by saying that, because he was in the Allied powers, it's okay. It's okay. It's just a conflict of war. By saying only one person is bad, and by far we know Hitler takes that pedestal for being bad, but there's also a second and third place in every pedestal, and we have to criticize, the war crimes on the Allied side, the war crimes on the Soviet side, the war crimes on the fascist Nazi sides. And what I try to clear up is, without a doubt, Hitler was bad, but that does not excuse Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong, you know, the killing of prisoners, the using of prisoners, the on all sides, is what I'm trying to clear up. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. As I also previously we alluded to, just because we are praising Aurangzeb doesn't mean that the people who fought him were bad. In the same way, just by criticizing people who fought Hitler, it's not that Hitler was a good person. I'm not, we are not calling that into question. It's just, again, putting things into perspective, right? Tens of millions, more than four times what Hitler killed, were killed in gulags by Joseph Stalin, right? And we should not even get into US and the atomic bomb and the decades and even centuries worth of traces that the nuclear bombs have left in Japan, right? The amount of harm that it has done, especially with Winston Churchill too, right? I believe that UK especially is subject to so much, censoring and so much ideological propaganda in their history textbooks, that I find it baffling that most of the people in UK actually blame actually blame Sir Winston Churchill for they accuse him for Tony Pandy riots. That was the Welsh miners riots that were bustling across in the UK, and he was trying very militantly to keep that kingdom united, with especially the Irish people also springing up for independence, and the Soviet movement in the UK. But again, as an Indian, I could only tell you my perspective, and Sir Winston Churchill, uh, sorry for my language, but was an absolute asshole when it came to India, right? He he deployed a policy called as scorched earth, which I think, Tabish, you might know, was a war tactic, essentially, as the war raged on of World War II, and the Japanese troops were closing in on India from the eastern front. They were on footsteps of India. They were in the
Burma, yeah,
knocking the
Burma.
door. Yeah, so they were in Burma, and the British got shit scared of it. They started, they started setting fire to all the fields and the crops that were, that were there in Bengal region. The region that comprises of West Bengal, that is in India today, and also, of course, Bangladesh. Right, that is an extremely fertile region, and they started setting wheat and rice crops that the local people were actually dependent on their livelihoods for. And it
Hmm.
actually did not affect UK or Sir Winston Churchill that much, but it caused
Millions
unbelievable
upon
human
millions of deaths. Children, women, adults. We cannot deny that India and Pakistan and Bangladesh and Burma played an extremely important role for the British Empire. And when it comes to being an attorney or a lawyer, you have to even if you do not agree with the person's opinion, you still have to help them. Correct? In a court of law, you even if the person you are defending, you personally do not like their ideas, you still have to defend them. So I'll go on the defense for Winston Churchill, not on the Burma, not on the scorched earth policy, but on the point of militarism, on the point of trying to keep the empire alive. And on his defense, and I'm not defending entirely every action Winston Churchill did. That is not what I'm defending. In in what I believe the view of Winston Churchill, for that is, it was practically important at this time, at this moment in history, for the empire to stay united. And we cannot, it can be filled with opinions. We can disagree. But what I hopefully we can agree on is, during a war, Britain heavily relied on its empire, from Egypt to India, from Australia to Canada, from Irish battalions to Scottish battalions, to Indian Sikh soldiers to Anzac troops. The what Winston Churchill feared, in my opinion, one of the most things he feared is the empire crumbling at that point in time, because it was it would have been it would have been not even describable how immensely harsh that would have been on the UK at that time in war. So going on the defense side for Winston Churchill, he shouldn't have done what he did with cracking down militaristically on people who didn't go with him. But at the time, at the situation, for the cause of why doing this, to him, was more important than being caught and being, I assume, being put in jail for what would have been crimes at that point against humanity. And so, by another warning here, again, I'm not trying to defend Winston Churchill for everything he did. I'm also not trying to say Winston Churchill was this evil satanic person. Not at all. Humans are complex, and he was the prime minister of an empire that stretched so far that it could be morning in one part of the empire and night in another. Just to make that clear, I'm just saying historically at that time, what he did
Yeah, I
was what he
mean,
did.
nice point. I mean, sorry to cut you off again, but yeah, I mean, nice point, because that was essentially his job description, to keep the empire alive and unbroken. But again, I mean, the things that led me to this research is it's just astonishing and outrageous in my opinion. So bear with me, and even the listeners, just give me 2 minutes as I run down what he did right for Indians. And just let me remind you, Indians, and that means the whole subcontinent was very essential for Winston Churchill, as Tabish mentioned. Uh, it is also debated that the casualty of war, it's never openly said, but the people in the subcontinent were the people that were killed the most, in especially in the World War II. And there's this amazing book by this historian called as Madhushri Mukherjee. She has written a book called as Churchill's Secret War. If you guys have time, you should look into it. It's an amazing read, and I just went through that. I just went through a synopsis of that book. And apart from the scorched earth, what happened was he denied people from using boats in Bengal region, fearing that the Japanese, who have, of course, their naval supremacy, might try to challenge that way. So he, in on one way, he destroyed all the crops. On the other way, he took fishing away from the people. And the all the grains that had been stockpiled by the Bengal government were all the figures of how much grain they had were distorted on purpose, right? So that they could get all those grains out of the country and to the United Kingdom, right? It is said that 18.5 million tons of food grain was transported from India to the UK amidst the wars, at a time when Bengal was hit with a deadly cyclone. All the crops died. It also had a fungal infestation which rendered problems, crop problems for a couple of years at least. And all they needed was 1 million ton of food grains to survive through this famine. And Churchill denied that. Just to put things into perspective, the 18.5 million tons of grain was transported to 14 million less people, right? So that is about 1.4 crore people more were living in Bengal and the whole Bangladesh and West Bengal area than the entire United Kingdom. And he denied 18.5 million, and they only needed 1 million to survive that famine, and it ended up killing 4 million people. I mean, at some point, again, with this coronavirus numbers and stuff like this, you can say that it's just a statistic, it's just a number on paper. But when you see the images that were actually prohibited by the British government to ever being spread, you can see how fucking outrageous these acts were. And when asked about it, uh, Winston Churchill was very he was very unfazed by the struggles that these guys were going through. Canada, America, Australia all offered to help. And Churchill, fearing that he might lose one of his colonies, as the people might see a savior in someone else and accept them, denied all the help that he was getting. And what he said was the starvation of anyhow underfed Bengalis is less serious than sturdy Greeks. And he also said that famine or no famine, Indians will breed like rabbits. So this is the kind of bigotry that we are dealing with. I mean, I fail to understand how is this guy better in any way than Hitler. If Hitler had won the war, we would have been worshipping him. He just happened to be in the correct side of the war, and that's the only reason why we worship. And that's my opinion. I mean, he's, I don't know, man, he's quite
Yeah, and
outrageous
yeah,
from
and just
I
to
guess.
put things into perspective, I had attended this session by William Dalrymple and Shashi Tharoor, And in that session, William Dalrymple had even mentioned, when there was a question asked on reparations, if Britain owes India any reparations, he had told, he, answered it with the gesture that before even owing reparations, British need to understand that they have done something wrong to the entire subcontinent there, because he was mentioning that his children attend British schools, and there's this just one line mentioned about Indian colonies. Uh, in their textbooks, it's just mentioned that yes, Britain had their colonies in the Indian subcontinent, and nothing else is mentioned about the slavery or the exploitation that they had done here, and therefore uh, their entire education system is designed in such a way that they are not even apologetic about the exploitation that they had inflicted upon us.
And
Yeah, and
what
that leads me to the question: what is the worth of a life, really? I mean, should we consider Hitler as a more evil person because he killed 6 million Jews as compared to Winston Churchill, who killed 4 million Bengalis, just because they were Westerners? And just because their life is more valuable, or for instance, Stalin, who killed 20 million Russians, or the people in that region, in the USSR region, are their lives one fifth of the worth one fifth of the lives that were there in the Jewish people? Again, I mean, I'm not taking away from the concentration camps. I'm just saying that if we are to criticize Hitler, we have to look at Winston Churchill, at Joseph Stalin in the same fucking light.
and I want to emphasize what you're saying. Uh, we look at uh Joseph Stalin in America. During the war, he was this savior of Russia. He eliminated Adolf Hitler and the Nazis with the help of America and Great Britain and France. What what we realize is that it's this ironic, in my opinion, ironic thing that we look at Joseph Stalin as being a major in the Allies, and then boom, 1949, 1946 rolls in. Joseph Stalin is the new Satan of the world. We realize that he killed like 20 million people, 40 million people, and so apparent like immediately he's considered, and yes, he was still considered bad during World War II, but we see this emphasis on communism bad, capitalism good during the Cold War, and we see this shift in thought of communism, this kind of attitude shift of they were friends to now they're complete enemies of freedom. And so to add to what you're saying, the a human life, no matter how many, who, how, when, where, if it's ended, that is horrible. We can all agree a human life should not be taken in any just. There's no justifiability, there, in my opinion, to take the human life away from a civilian, a child, a mother, a father. There's it, for anyone, for anywhere. And so when we look at Joseph Stalin, Winston Churchill, Adolf Hitler, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, all these people, we have to realize, yes, you know, I agree with you. We shouldn't say Winston Churchill is this angel, this great man. He won the war. That means he's great. No. What we have to see is the a big thing to me is the cause, why they did it, how did they do it. What was the reason they did it? What was the impact they did? And so we should say that of course the killing of 40 million to 6 million to 20 million, those numbers aren't equivalent. And so what it the thing is, it's tricky to talk about this. That's the thing. For yeah, okay. So what I was saying. So yeah, seeing these people, it's a very slippery slope on opinion, right? Uh, and so my thing is, uh, we all agree Adolf Hitler was massively bad. He not only the 6 million people he killed systematically, he murdered very many people, like a lot. Germany's population suffered tremendously because of him. France, the Soviet Union, uh, you know, it's said that the Russian population probably won't ever, be at that height as it was during the Soviet Union. And so, what I want to say is, uh, what Winston Churchill did, what Stalin did, was immensely evil. What and and so they're they're all in the way of killing people. They're all bad. Uh, and the big thing we have to realize is all of them did things really bad. The Burma, the gulags, the silencing of opinions, and a big thing of opinion is Hitler started the war. He's responsible for all of this technically. I believe he should be blamed for part. Winston Churchill should be blamed for what he did. He did that. But as well, we should blame the person who started the war, the person who invaded Poland in 1939 to start this bloody, bloody, bloody conflict. To because because of him, the actions of what happened. And so we should put the blame on Joseph Stalin, on Winston Churchill, but we should also not forget who started this war, who technically is responsible for many of the atrocities that happened because of the war. Uh, so that's what I want to say is it's a very complicated situation. It's not something easy to answer. It's something that will always have negative opinions, no matter how you try saying it or how you do say it, or when you say it.
Yeah, and that's perfectly put, I guess. I couldn't imagine putting it in a better way. And of course, war is such a evolutionary defect that this human species has, and I don't think that we can, overcome it in near future. And do you have anything to add, Akash?
Yeah, so as closing, I would say that just because we have discussed about Churchill or Stalin at length, again doesn't vilify Tabish's point, or it doesn't negate it that Hitler was essentially a bad person, right? Uh, but we have to look at, do the means justify the cause? And yeah, the war is awful, and it takes out the inhuman in a lot of people. uh, do I think that Churchill or Stalin would have done the same thing on the same magnitude if it wasn't for the war? No. They wouldn't have done it, of course. They would have also liked their colonies to prosper and stay their colonies, uh, instead of actually demanding independence, which actually happened because of the famine in Bengal. It was such a huge table turner that people got riled up so much, and that was the start of the fall of the British Empire. And I think that means do not justify the cause. Winston Churchill, Stalin, and Roosevelt have all done atrocities and committed atrocious crimes, and this podcast could serve as an informative piece of people who have been fed lies or propaganda by their own country's history textbooks. uh, I am not saying that you should turn on Winston Churchill, or you should turn on UK, or you should turn on your own nation. I'm just saying that we should learn from this in a way that we should understand what a human life means. And just because Schindler's List covered Hitler's atrocities, and there is uh, no more than a minor news article about a Welsh mining accident about Winston Churchill doesn't mean that he was a innately good person. We have to keep questioning, and we have to, learn from the mistakes that our forefathers have committed. That's evolution. If the very fact that we are, talking about it today is, a very it's the uh, exemplification of that fact.
And yeah, I agree. And I would like to add something to what you said. Um, always, no matter who you're talking to, what you're talking about, use multiple sources. Use use multiple sources. Do not rely on one source for all information. Always try finding, if you can, unbiased sources. If you cannot, factual sources, please, because history is as Akash said, is written by the victors, but not all the time. And and we see this with the Confederates, the states' rights movements, the the idolizing of Confederate statues. And so what I want to emphasize in this podcast episode is that we are telling you what other people believe of the people you believed in. And we might not personally be correct. We have our own biases as people. We have our own thoughts, our own opinions, our own ideas. But that does not take away from the meaningful message is that you should always check. You should not base what you think of a person based on only opinion. That can be a driving factor to research, to study, to sit down, to talk, to to go to a library, to a museum, to an art gallery, to check out the art from history. History is not only written in paper, pencil, notebooks, school textbooks, what your teacher says, what your teacher draws on the board. Go to an art museum, go to a history museum, go look at pictures, go look at articles, go look at journals from soldiers and people themselves, go look at anyone from that era, and you can see history through it. So what I want to emphasize, and again, this is what I want to emphasize personally, always do not rely on one source of information for everything. And also, for anything you do, uh the one action of a person does not justify his or her, being. If somebody says something bad to me, maybe they were angry that day, maybe they just weren't having the same, ideas that day as they are usually, maybe they were angry at something. So you should always take for granted somebody else, and you should always look, especially with historical people, their background, why they did this. Would they have done this separately, differently? So that's what I want to say.
Yeah, and that's again, that I don't think that I can add much to what Tabish has said about the sources of history and the ways one can draw conclusions about different perspective on history. Ultimately, history is abstract, and in a lot of ways, it's also a result of multiple perspectives. And again, history is the only way we can avoid committing mistakes, and we can prosper as a society. And I think with this note, it's the perfect way to end this episode, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the one takeaway, this does not have a conclusion because, like life, history is often complicated. So, the one conclusion that I would like to take away from this is always question, and always keep questioning. And on that note, it's been a delight having you, Tabish. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining our podcast. Yeah, so with that, I guess we can wrap it up.
Yes.
No problem. This was an excellent podcast. I really liked it. I enjoyed talking to you guys. I'll enjoy listening to this. You've brought insight that I personally didn't have before doing talking on this podcast. So my insight on history, especially from you know the perspective of other people, has grown. I would assume your perspective on American history and history in general, from me, has greatly increased. And I'm delighted.
Definitely.
I'm delighted on being in this podcast. I will genuinely recommend this podcast, and I would genuinely come back if you ever need me as a guest.
Yes, of course. I mean, I hope this turns into a long-term equation that we are having now.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Again, I mean, I also learned a lot from you, Tabish, and Sammy. So yeah, on that note, let's wrap it up. It's
yes.
been fun. So let's say bye in unison. All right.
Chalo. Bye,
All right.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.